What I'm not proud of is the way we did not anticipate that there would be corruption as we rolled out the personal protective equipment.
Hello there guys, and welcome to Daily Updates. Today we look at the tender system in South Africa, which is a major contributor to corruption that is happening in South Africa. There is a term called tender irregularities. So in simple terms, it means that the deviation from the prescribed process of tendering. Once the supply chain speaks to someone on the outside and they decide that we are going to give you this tender even if you don't meet the requirements, and in turn you are going to give us this money, that's where the corruption that has been hitting South Africa for many years starts. Through this process of communication between the supply chain and the people from the outside, the business owners who just starts a business today and tomorrow it gets millions of rands in tenders. So in 2020 there was a problem of COVID, and Ramaphosa announced that there would be 500 billion that would be given to deal with the problem of COVID-19. That is when a lot of comrades decided that they are going to check their membership of the ANC to confirm if it's in good standing, because it was time to eat. The Father Christmas has finally arrived and is giving away gifts in the form of 500 billion rands. Special investigating unit uncovered that there were 5,400 government COVID-19 procurement valued at 14.3 billion, which were awarded to around 3,000 service providers. And of all these numbers, there were a lot of irregularities in giving these people, meaning that the billions of rands that was given to help the people with fighting COVID was in turn turned into the stomach of the comrades, because people were eating without even fearing that people are dying while we are eating. They didn't care. They took a lot of money in irregularities. I mean, there were instances where people were like starting companies under 21 days already, they were receiving 800 millions. And you wonder, where did that company work? What service, what experience does the company have to be awarded such a lot of money? It starts in the departments where supply chain, it can be municipalities, it can be departments. These supply chain people have friends, have families, and then they conspire with those families in order to give them these tenders. They give them information on which tender is coming out and how much it has, what you need to have, which papers you need to have. In the end, even if those people do not qualify, they get that money. Put that money in their purse, they pay each other, and at the end of the day, those people who have companies that qualify will never get those jobs because they don't have anything to give. And in turn, the people lose. There was a lot of money that was lost because of such a shameless thing called corruption. 500 billion, most of the money was lost to this problem of tender irregularities. The following are example of that part of corruption for the 500 billion rands. Hamilton Ndlovu, a businessman, scored 172 million in PPE contracts. Digital Vibes, many know that, received 150 million for COVID irregular tenders under the Department of Health. And the last one, there was a Cogta deputy director called Raymond Manzini from Mpumalanga. Him and his brother benefited around 5.9 million in PPE tender. So these are just few examples of the many that was happening during the COVID eras of 2020, 2021, where these people just ate the money, disguising themselves as the people who are offering PPE tenders. But in turn, they were looking to have a lot of money from this. And the government tried to combat this problem of tender problems through the SIU. But in the end, most of people ran away from even being accountable for their problems. And it speaks volumes of how they neglect corruption. Something that could be combated easy, they just neglect it because their fellow comrades were eating.
We have spent almost 450 million. It's for cars, accommodation, transport, uniform. Their uniform, like you can see, they are fully kitted. As much as we are still to purchase other important things, as like the Premier was indicating, the type of a caliber of the tools of trade that we have to give them. But in all, we have spent almost 450 million. On the issue of CCTV cameras,
tender corruption is an ongoing problem in many parts of South Africa. If you look at various provinces in South Africa, you will realize that even in 2023, there are still problems of tender corruptions. Let us look at various instances. For example, in Gauteng, the Democratic Alliance is asking questions after the provincial government of Gauteng awarded a former employee a 350 million accommodation tender, which relates to the accommodation of 6,000 crime prevention wardens. Those are part of the Nasi Spani program. Panyaza Lisufi knows very well those guys. He's been giving them jobs, but apparently there is 350 million that was given to a former employee. The person decided, I'm no longer an employee of the government, and then in turn, they are chasing the tendering system. That's how easy money can be made. In KZN, the Department of Education awarded a 2.1 billion tender to a businessman to be able to feed millions of learners in that province. And the problem started when that businessman and his business failed to provide almost 6,000 schools in the province food in March. They failed completely to provide food, and millions of school learners started starving. That is when the Department of Education backtracked on their decision to award that businessman such a huge tender. In Limpopo, the Department of Health is involved in tender irregularities and fraud in the procurement of coal for some hospitals that don't have boilers. So according to the whistleblower, the department has awarded multi-million rand tenders to supply coal to 14 hospitals, some of which don't even have boilers. These are some of the examples of tender problems that we are having in many provinces. I mean, if you can sit down and look at all the provinces, just in 2023 alone, you are going to uncover that each province has about 1,000 of irregularities in terms of tenders. And if you go deeper, you might spend the whole day or many days speaking about this problem, because it is the fault of government. It is the fault of national and provincial government for us to have such a problems in terms of this thing called tenderpreneurs, because people just rely on tenders knowing that it is all about corruption. They are no longer looking at providing proper services. They are even providing half of the work they are supposed to do. You look at the roads, tenders. Everywhere you go, tenders, accommodation tenders. And this problem is giving us sleepless nights because people are sleeping without food. When you look at the various solutions, you can look at the fact that if they did not offer this tender to such a person, maybe there would not be problems. Personally, I think it's about time the government relook at this system of doing tenders. Instead of doing tenders, maybe it is about time the government, the local government, the provincial government, the national government decides that instead of procuring these tenders, it is about time we decide that our government can do these services themselves. I mean, they can slowly introduce this new system where instead of using the tenders, we can be able to acquire more people, hire more people to do these jobs, and even buy more equipment when time goes for you to do them yourself. I mean, if now in the department they are looking to get tissues, a simple tissue, they are not going to take the money and go to a shop, go to Macro, go to Pick and Pay and buy those tissues. They are not going to do that. They are going to look at an individual who can bring those tissues, and after bringing those tissues, they are not going to pay the same price that they are supposed to buy at Macro. They are going to buy it 3 times the tissue if they are lucky. And you wonder, are we not wasting money when we are just having a blind eye on something so simple where we can just do this ourselves? Instead of doing it, we are paying people to do it on our behalf. That is a major contributor to the problems of South Africa. And if parties are really looking into making sure that corruption is combated, these are the problems that they need to look at. We are heading towards 2024. We are having sleepless nights about the problems of corruption. Of course, they need to relook at everything. But what about the smaller things that if they look at them, they can fix the whole system of South Africa? I appeal to many people in government. Of course, they are not listening. I think it's about time they relook at the tenderpreneurs. People have titles called tenderpreneurs because they can just sit at home, have that quotation, send it to their friends in the supply chain. It gets approved. It comes back. There's a markup of 300,000% on that product. And when that service is delivered, the money is paid. They share it with the person who helped them in the supply chain management. Now there's a problem. People are becoming corrupt while they have jobs. How do you expect someone who's studying currently to be able to have faith in the government when it's all centered around corruption? It is about time they sit down and relook at how they do things. But if they don't listen, maybe we can decide next year and look at a party that is deciding to listen and look at the problem of tenders. Because with tenders, you get rich easy. So these criminals who are really making themselves rich through tenderpreneurship, they are the ones that are not going to allow this thing to be scrapped. So a voter must really look at the fact that who is really interested in scraping the problems of corruption, then they should vote for those people. Anyway, guys, I thank you for listening to this part of the podcast and continuing supporting the channel. Please listen until next time. Cheers.